What is going on, FPL managers? Welcome to the deadline stream ahead of Gameweek 33. 25 minutes to go, and I'm joined by Seb. How are you, buddy?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. What did you say a minute ago as you saw me? You look stressed, friend. So, free hit, didn't it?
I'm sure a 6-month-old baby is taking its toll to a certain extent, but clearly not on your FPL rank. You've unlocked the achievement that your rank is now underneath the total amount of points that you have, so very jealous of that.
Oh,
Crazy
nice. Although,
season.
to be fair, it was Son captain. I would think I was like 4K or something. Captain Son, he completed 6 passes, took 3 shots, and delivered a silly number of points. There was very little skill in that move, to be honest, which is often the way, right? You know, the difference between 10K, 20K, 1K is luck. Not that that means it's undeserved luck. You know, you play for that, but it's not necessarily something you can directly control, right?
Son absolutely killed me last week, but he's so good. So, you know, fair play to everyone that had him, captained him, and got all his points. You know, these things happen throughout the season, and we can all benefit at different times. So, absolutely fine with that. You've got to be fancying a top 1K finish at the end of this season, Seb, and you're playing your free hit this week.
Yeah, so maybe this is the last of my chips. And so I was one of the wildcard 26 group. And we're still, I know we're not really talking about it anymore, but we're still in the middle of that because a lot of people who didn't wildcard in 26 are going to be wildcarding in 34. There's bench boost left. There's going to be free hits in 36 and 37. That feels a bit like the wildcard 26 thing, where I think a free hit in 36 or 37 is probably the best move on average. But for my team and my situation, I think a free hit now makes more sense because I can now build with transfers towards 36 and 37, which is what I want to do. I've got some hits I can take if I need to that other people took back in 26. So I think, while of course I'd love to aim for 1K again, realistically, I've probably had my gain on the field. So if I did go and drop to 5K, 8K, 10K, I'd be okay with that. And I think that would be fair because if people who are currently 15K have got their wildcard to play, they should be taking my spot in the top 10K, give or take, right? Because I took theirs with my wildcard.
Sure, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. And, you know, a top 10K finish is absolutely fantastic. Whereabouts you finish between 1K and 10K doesn't really matter, I suppose. But, yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat as you. I have a free hit left, and you're choosing to play it now. And I'm not. And I am really worried this week. Really worried. I've made some terrible moves to plan for the future. And I'm not sure how much my free hit will have benefit in 37 or 36, depending on whether the City double is allocated. We'll have to see. Hopefully this game week is kind to me, but it could be an almighty disaster, Seb. We'll get onto it in a minute. But let's have a look at your free hit team. We've got it up here. 10 starting 11 doublers, and Mr. Mo Salah chose to keep him in. Yeah, talk us through it.
Sure. So I think a lot of it picks itself in terms of if you're free hitting, we know we're probably going to try and take advantage of United, even though it's 1.5 fixtures, if you like, because of Liverpool, Newcastle. And I probably would have had more Leicester until the midweek when I don't know what I was expecting, because I remember saying like, oh, well, I'll see how the Europe goes, and then I'll pick Barnes or Maddison or, you know, Kelechi and Acho or what have you. Leicester won, which I guess means longer term their assets are slightly poorer. But for this week, it probably doesn't change all that much. So I'm not sure what I would have done different. But I've got Maddison because I think his minutes are slightly more assured than maybe some other options, although we know it could be his turn for a rest and maybe Barnes plays. But all else being equal, I think Maddison has the best points potential. So I'm happy to combine those two and have Maddison. Double Newcastle defence, because I think a lot of people have identified that. Decent home fixtures, potentially against tired teams. Although, again, that always feels like a slight sort of, well, how tired? No, sure, they might be a bit tired, but is it enough to tip it in their favour? Target and Shah, because they basically came out slightly highest on like expected points, but it's all much of a muchness. Schmeichel in goal over Ramsdale, he's on my bench, simply because I think I prefer their fixtures ever so slightly. I think both will get save points. And without Partey at Arsenal, I don't know how good the defence will be. One of the reasons I've not gone Gabriel, who I know a lot of people have. Tellez, so this is what I might change. Well, we might run out of time, Ted, so I don't know if I'll do it or not. But Tellez, because I like the set pieces. I like he's nailed with the shore out. Yeah, they'll concede to Liverpool. They might even concede to Norwich. But I don't know how much I fancy, say, Sancho instead. I've got Ronaldo and Fernandes, Captain Ronaldo. I think that's fairly straightforward. So I could change that.
Who would you change? Sure. Would you downgrade Salah to Sancho?
So I think with what we have here, the thing I'm sort of thinking about as we do it here is Adams is on the bench. Should I play him over Salah? I quite like the idea of benching Salah just because hilarious. Like I did try and build a free hit that had Cancelo, Kane, and Salah in to see if I could bench all three of them. But that maybe would have been a bit silly.
That's a big kick in the teeth to everyone else who's not free hitting.
Especially if they go and score massive as well. I just look really stupid. But I potentially do Adams in for Salah. And then the other things would be, do I want to say Sancho over Martinelli and then maybe Gabriel over Telles? That's kind of what I'm weighing up. But I think I was saying, it all sounds like it's like a 2-point difference, right? Like other than something I can't call, it's all much of a muchness.
I know we have slightly differences of opinion about this double game week, and in terms of the optimization, playing as many doublers as possible is optimal according to the models and everything we know about FPL. It's just something that I can't get my head around. The fact that you've just said you're going to play Adams ahead of Salah, I just can't.
So, at the moment I've got Salah, right? So I think the way of thinking of it, and of course this is what the models show, but I think you don't have to like the models. It's just a tool. You can, the way we look at football with our own heads is a model, right? You build a model in your head and you use it, even if that model is who looks good on Match of the Day. I think a nice way of framing it is that Man United basically have a similar defense to Brighton, if I remember. And I know Kane and Son are popular in people's teams, but that's because of Kane and Son. No one's massively thinking they should keep KDB, maybe, or Sterling this week, who I think they also play Brighton, right? So I wonder if because Man United traditionally are good and now they're not good, we're overestimating how bad they are. Liverpool beat them 5-0 in the past, of course. Salah could absolutely score. He could get a hat-trick. So could Che Adams. Salah's more likely to get a hat-trick, but Che Adams has twice the opportunity to do it. Then if we go back to the models, I think it was something like Salah's expected about 7 points and Adams is expected like 7.5 or 8 points or something like that. So not a big difference. But it's just that extra fixture. He gets 2 more points for turning up. If Salah goes nuts, absolutely, it's unlikely someone's going to catch him. But that would be the case for any player. Adams just has twice the opportunity to earn those points. And those aren't terrible fixtures. Arsenal without a party, their defence has been good, but maybe a little poorer the last couple of games. And Burnley, I fancy that. And Adams' numbers are pretty decent himself.
Is it really interesting? I always think with the modelling, it's the best guess. It's how we're using previous experience to forecast what's going to happen in the future. But the missing element is always the variance about what happens over and above that prediction. And the variance is the magic in the boxing that you can't actually. It's something that we miss in the variables. It's something that we miss in terms of the prediction. And I think that's something that you can do with eye test. You can look at all of these different caveats that don't enter that prediction. I just think I was at the Southampton game against Chelsea and I was watching Adams and I was going, that there is no way ever coming near my FPL team.
Look, I'm starting Salah at the moment. So I'm making this argument and then I'm immediately going, yeah, but Mo Salah. I'm very happy without Kane and Son. I think I had Kane at one point, but if I'm going to back a singler, it's going to be the best player in the game. I think, so on what you're saying about variance is the key thing with variance is you cannot predict it. You cannot opt to have it. It's a thing that happens to you whether you like it or not. So you can't go, I'm going to have Salah because I like his variance. You might say his expected mean is 7 points, and we know his ceiling is X and his floor is Y. And so he has a large standard deviation. So I will go for a player who has a high mean and a large standard deviation. Bruno Fernandes has often been a good example of that in the past. But that still averages out to that same number of points over a period of time. And because you don't know when that large variance from the mean is going to come, which is the standard deviation, you basically just have to go for the average. And over time, it will even out. The problem with FPL is we play 1 week at a time. If you played all 38 weeks in one go and could only pick one team and it all happened in 5 minutes, you wouldn't speak about variance, you'd go for the players who had the highest mean. It's because we play 1 week at a time. And I think that plays with our heads. And it's absolutely possible to, we mentioned earlier about me captaining Salah. That's effectively getting lucky. And sure, if you like, I played for that luck because I captained a player that can convert chances well. But those things are built into the model. Son isn't just rated on his XG. I think he is rated according to a slightly superior finishing ability.
So the interesting thing for me is that I actually do this as a day job. I'm an underwriter. And we have sophisticated models that the pricing guys do. They come up with all of this stuff. It's my job to think about what's the missing stuff over and above that. And if we apply that to football, I go, right, if we had a perfect model, we would understand how a footballer thinks and how that exact moment, whether we can predict whether he's going to score a goal or not. So what we're trying to do is predict like scoring personality from a footballer. If we had full 100% knowledge of how a footballer thinks, we could almost 100% predict what was going to be happening. So it's that extra bit that I think we could sort of allocate into that variance bit, but obviously we're never going to be able to predict that because it's impossible. But
maybe I think that's really interesting. I think so. For clarity as well, I think you're right. The models or whatever I'm trying to do here, they're not perfect. They're a best guess. There is missing information, but as you've said, I don't know if we're in a position to be able to quantify that missing information, and therefore you kind of have to set it aside. Like the world of underwriting or insurance or whatever, acts of God, right? We just set those aside. We go, we're not covering you for that because it can't be predicted, and we're not going to build that into the model because it would be too expensive, too unlikely, whatever. So we set it aside. Of course, as well, if you put this in like the professional world of like, I'm trying to buy a house at the moment, right? So your mortgages and insurance and stuff like that, they don't give me 100% fair rate. They give me a fair rate with a little premium for them because they're a business. So of course, when you're looking for those unexpected events, they're trying to get an edge. It's like the roulette wheel, right? Where there's black and red and there's all the numbers, and then there's that zero, which means the house wins. That's why roulette wheels are profitable for the house. They don't care what one individual person does because they know that over time, on average, they will win 1% more than the public. And I think that maybe comes back to what we're trying to do here, right? Which is the casino knows that over time, the averages work. So that's what they play for. And then they tilt them in their favor slightly. The thing we can't do with FPL is find the zero. That's the variance, but it's not on the board. We don't have access to it.
I love this. I'm very conscious that we're just having a very deep, meaningful conversation about how to predict FPL. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back to that after the deadline because we'll be sticking around until 11:30 for team news. Plenty of time to discuss the ins and outs. Love talking with Seb about all of this sort of stuff. But I feel like we're neglecting you in the chat. Plenty of questions coming in. We're talking about variance and fundamental risk appetites and stuff like that. And you guys are going, Saka or Wood? And I'm going, neglecting you guys. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the Newcastle forwards because you've gone Chris Wood this week. I have actually gone Sam Maximan. Is there too much difference from your part, or was the Wood the obvious choice?
So I have a question for you. How assured are we of Sam Maximan's minutes? I know they've been irregular recently. Is that down to injury?
We're never assured of Sam Maximan minutes, but the fact that he's fit, the fact he's got double game week, the fact he's got Norwich in game week 34, if he can string 3 games together, Seb, 3 games in a row, I'd be so happy owning him. I've always wanted to own him for like a double game week, but he's always just disappointed me.
And Gucci headband in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just such an exciting player to watch. And, it's not an FPL template pick. It's something that I want to have a bit of fun with. And I think Wood is probably the better option all in all because of security minutes and on penalties, of course.
That's the one for me, penalties. That's what if I knew St. Maximin was playing 90 in both matches, which someone more in the know than me might be able to say that, maybe I'd edge that way. I think it's penalties. We talk about, so horribly link it back to the previous conversation. We're talking about what we can predict. You can't predict when a penalty is going to happen, but say they get 5 over the course of a season, that does push him up in any given week, and it's a very good chance to score. So I genuinely am not sure Wood is going to score from open play, but I don't know who is going to score from open play from Newcastle. So I'll take the penalty taker and I'll take 2 of their defenders.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I think Az is even captaining Bruno Guimaraes today.
I saw that. I kind of so hope that comes off. Like, I don't agree with it, but that doesn't mean I think, it's not binary. I don't think it's a 0 chance of working. It's just a lower threshold than is acceptable to me. But I hope it comes off. Like if it does, of course, there's a bit of luck there, but that's what he's going for, right? He's going for, I have no idea if this is going to work, but if it does, I'll make a massive gain on the field. So that's an acceptable risk reward for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he's been really good with the foresight recently. Like Martinelli, before everyone else, brought him in and he had like a double figure haul in that first game week. And I think he even captained him, might have made that up. But yeah, fair play to him. Hopefully it works out for him. But yeah, the Newcastle attack, I don't know whether we're overvaluing it just because of double game week hype. But it's nice to have a representative anyway with my team of single game weekers. Let's just have a few more questions on your team. Mattiat is asking, why are you captaining Ronaldo over Bruno?
So we think Ronaldo has penalties. I think if I recall off the top of my head, Ronaldo's numbers are slightly better. Of course, Fernandes does get more points for a goal, but Ronaldo, in theory, gets more bonus for doing the same thing as Bruno, although we know he's good for bonus anyway. But then the decision actually came down to just looking at the likely lineup and maybe why I'm less confident on Telles. from the sort of front 4 or 3 backwards, the team doesn't look all that hot. If it's Pogba and Matic in the middle, I wonder if Fernandes is going to go backwards more than he goes forward compared to normal. I'm pretty confident that Ronaldo will play both matches, especially with Cavani out, which was the main, I think on the Scoutcast, I said I would do Fernandes, mostly because I wasn't sure on Ronaldo. But if he does play both, I think I have a slightly better chance of being involved in the points, given how I expect Man United to play. I think it's real close though, right? You know, if you knew Fernandes had penalties, I'd be there in a second, for example.
I mean, he very well could be. Who knows? But I think they sort of rotate it now and then. But yeah, who knows? I mean, Ronaldo's capable of scoring a hat trick as he did a few game weeks ago. I mean, that could very well happen against Norwich. And if that happens, I might cry because I have 0 Man United players. Well, I've just got to get through this Norwich game. But
if I wasn't free hitting, I would have 0-2 for what it's worth.
Yeah,
I think there's an interesting game to be played here where if you're not free hitting, you really have to focus yourself on the game weeks that are coming, not this one. I'm going to have that problem to solve later. And I don't think I'm going to own Cancelo at any point because I don't think it works for my team, and that could hurt.
I formulated a plan to get Cancelo in, but price rises were not kind last night. So it looks like I'm
Has he gone up again last night?
Yeah, he went up again, and the likes of Doherty, Cody, Rafinha, they all went down like heavy owned players.
Oh, that's tough. So, I have a couple of them. Oops, today's.
Yeah, really tough. But yeah, we'll sort it out afterwards. Martinelli and Saka. Yeah, Lacazette looks to be... I don't know whether this is true, but he hasn't trained the last few days. I think he's got some illness or some personal injuries, I think, personal reasons, Arteta said in the press conference. So Martinelli and Saka do look to be the best Arsenal assets, in my opinion. So you've done well including those. I think do you reckon they'll go out and attack Southampton at the weekend? And how do you fancy their chances against Chelsea?
I think Saka's nailed in most people's free hit teams. And then Martinelli, I know some people maybe prefer a Sancho or Ward-Prowse. I think, speaking of the models, I think his minutes will be a bit higher than they expect. So his points may be a bit higher. Because if Lacazette is out, I think there's a good chance he plays up front, which we'd expect to be a bonus for him. But we know that's not always how it works. Either way, I'd back him to play, say, one and a half of those matches. Against Chelsea, for example, it could suit how he's going to be able to break on the counter as well. And against Southampton, we've seen this in the past where, was it when Southampton lost 9-0 to Leicester? They then won their next game 1-0. So it's always tempting to go, they've just been absolutely battered. I should jump on them and try and double down on that. There's no guarantee that will happen. There's every chance there'll be a reaction or not. But almost just trying to set that aside, I think Arsenal are better than Southampton, whether it's home or away. They have 2 matches. I think Saka and Martinelli in any given week are good midfielders for the numbers they present. So I'm happy to double up there.
I can confirm that Arsenal are definitely a better team than Southampton. It was absolutely atrocious at the weekend. I can't remember a worse performance from a team. They just completely capitulated. There is a chance that they just do exactly the same against Arsenal, but I'm
seems to happen every now and again, doesn't it? For whatever, I really like Raaf Hasenhüttl, but for whatever reason, every now and again, just something doesn't work and it completely falls apart.
Yeah, some heavy defeats for Southampton, but otherwise they're just a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde side. Like they really do have. They are a really, really solid team and play some really good football. Just on some occasions, they just completely capitulate. Very, very strange. But yes, I think that free hit team looks absolutely fantastic. Last question, mate. Have you made any changes since giving me this team?
Not yet, and I have like 7 minutes. I think, like I said, the thing for me is there's some things that are definitely nailed, and then it's just a case of, do I say have Tellers or Gabriel, Salah or Adams? Do I try and get Sancho in? Would that be instead of Salah or instead of maybe one of the Arsenal midfielders? It's maybe much of a muchness. I think the thing really comes down to, do I prefer, say, Tellers or Sancho? Tellers is on set pieces. It's all about that Norwich match. They probably concede, well, they definitely concede to Liverpool. But then do I think Sancho gets a return against Liverpool? Probably not. So I'm maybe, if they keep a clean sheet against Norwich, I think Tellers looks good because he's on set pieces. And maybe there's a slightly higher chance of that than Sancho returning. I feel like I'm about to talk myself into the opposite, actually. Do I actually think there's a higher chance of Tellez keeping a clean sheet and, say, getting something from a set piece than there is Sancho getting a goal or assist? I'm not sure. It feels close.
I mean, the likes of Salah and Tellez versus Sancho and Cancelo, something like that.
I'm not getting Cancelo.
You're not getting single game weaker. You're not tempted at all. Okay.
All Tellez has to do is turn up twice, not concede 4 goals across the 2, and he'll get 4 points. Cancelo keeps a clean sheet at 6. Of course, he could assist or score or whatever. His numbers are actually lower than I expected. So he's either a Son level returner from defense, or because he's on like something like 0.25 XGI, whereas your Jameses and Trents are on about 0.4. So still very strong from Cancelo, but not enough to make me think, oh, he's definitely going to score against, what is a reasonably good Brighton side.
Yeah, absolutely fair enough. We'll move on to my team in a moment. Let's just answer some questions in the chat. Vishal is asking Salah versus Ronaldo this week. I think if you're asking Seb, I'm going to answer for you, Seb. It's always going to be Ronaldo because he's got the 2 fixtures. Do you guys, Mayclack, do you guys think Maddison will play both? Personally, I think he's probably going to get 30 minutes in the first game and start against Everton. Would you agree with that, Seb?
Yeah, I think I'm slightly more bullish on his minutes than others, but I wouldn't expect 2 90s. I think a 90 and a 30 or a 60 is probably very fair.
Yeah, I'd say so. Melch is asking Cornet versus Bruno Guimaraes for Game Week 33. I think probably Bruno Guimaraes is probably better because I'm not sure what the outcome of Dyche being sacked will be on that team with Ben Mee seemingly managing the team. It's very, very strange.
Well, what's your take on this, Ted? I've seen like a few people say, maybe this is just tongue-in-cheek, but people may be considering Burnley assets because Dyche has gone, new manager bounce, whatever it is. For me, a good manager has left and is going to be replaced by people who are either less experienced or less qualified, just because they are, who are very likely to employ the same tactics. That doesn't make Burnley worse, but I really don't think it makes them better. And so I've got Taylor on my bench just because I needed a defender, but I've mostly ignored Burnley, to be honest.
I really don't know. It's really difficult to say, and I think everyone is confused by the time of the announcement. Like one day before the game, absolutely, completely strange. And as you say, it's not like they had someone lined up to completely just come in and change up the process. I think there's not going to be too much difference. And new manager bounce, maybe we'll have to wait for that. Dovetailing that with a question in the chat, should you play Fraser Forster or Pope? I think Pope is probably a decent shout because they've got probably the best fixtures of the game week, to be completely honest. And Pope, he's great for save points. I just don't like that Arsenal game for Southampton. So Fraser Forster probably concedes, I think, in both, to be honest. Right, let's just move on to my team before we run out of time. It doesn't look very pretty compared to yours, I'm afraid. It's just the template single game weekers. I've only got 3 doublers, and I've taken a -8 this week, which is just crazy, and I kind of regret it already. But I had exact funds to preempt bringing in Chelsea players for their potential double in Game Week 34. Really I'm going to be the biggest Chelsea fan later at the FA Cup semi-final against Palace. Hopefully they win. Otherwise I'll look like a complete fool. And I brought Sam Maximan in, and I'm captaining him. This could really, really capitulate for me this week. That rank could absolutely plummet. But otherwise, from Game Week 34, it looks pretty well set up. Pretty happy. Can we just fast forward to Game Week 34, Seb?
I mean, I like your team going forward. You're not free hitting this week, and you've not made transfers really focused on this week. So, of course, it doesn't look perfect for this week because that's what you've effectively tried to do. I like it going forward. It's in a better position than mine. I do have one question, which asking, not telling. Alonso over James, because James absolutely a better player. But if we think James gets another rest, especially ahead of the FA Cup, do you think Alonso with 90 minutes is better than the James 20-minute cameo?
Funnily enough, I texted Janu earlier asking him, should I play James over Alonso? Because he's pretty clued up on the Chelsea stuff. So I still don't know. I completely get your point about whether Reece James plays that FA Cup and then gets rested. But I guess the same thing could happen for Alonso. And I guess I'm just hoping that James just completely misses the Arsenal game. I think the Arsenal game is just, it's high profile enough for James to play in both. And I'd prefer to have James over Alonso. I think it's 50-50, to be completely honest. I'm not really sure. It's kind of a bit of a meta talk, to be completely honest. And I could get it wrong either way. So, I'm an extra -4 to bring in Alonso this week. I've had a lot of questions on Twitter about that because it seems such a rookie move, which it kind of is, to bench him. But I mean, my team is full of like Fodens and Havertz and all this sort of stuff who could potentially be rotated, and I need a I've got like Cody and Gelhardt without any fixtures. So I kind of need that extra player. But the main reason is I had exact funds to do Doherty, Rafinha and Lacazette to Alonso, Havertz and Sam Maximan last night. It also allows me to make future moves in the future for free rather than with an extra -4. So I've just moved that -4 to this game week to make it even worse for my rank. But, it's exactly the same. And I don't know.
You make a very good case. I still don't know if I agree, but you argue it well, so fair enough.
I don't think I'm making a good case at all, to be honest. But yeah, I'm captaining the Newcastle guy. I mean, that's really exciting, but I really don't know whether it's sensible or not. I'm just taking a leaf out of your book, Seb, and just going with the double game weaker player. I mean, if I was sensible, I'd probably captain Kane, to be completely honest.
I mean, yeah, when you put it like that, it sounds like you should captain Kane. But then when you put so many things like that, I think FPL sounds different to how it actually works. We so often focus on it's such a good example of all those biases and all those sort of lazy is the wrong word because it's not lazy, it's how our brains work. But things that are so easy to fall into that when you actually break it down, the counterintuitive move often is the right one. Depending on your intuition, there are some people who are very, very good at FPL and just grab a couple of highlights here and there because they're very clued up on, the way their brain works, the way their intuition works really ties into how the models think FPL works.
As soon as you start talking about intuition, I lose all credibility, mate. It's fine because I don't have anything. Anyway,
so I think 11 o'clock has just come. So I guess I'm starting Salah.
10:59 on my clock. A lot of people asking, should I start Rudiger? Yeah, I think Rudiger is probably more sensible than the likes of James because he's more likely to play. I mean, yeah.
I might do the opposite because I wonder if Arsenal will score, and therefore I'd probably rather have the potential of a James return.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, it depends how sure you are on the minutes, right? If you think there's a good chance of him starting, then you definitely play James. If you think there's a good chance of him starting on the bench, then I understand Rudiger a bit more.
Nice. 11 o'clock, deadline's passed. Go on in the chat. Tell us who you've captained. Tell us the most ridiculous moves that you've made. Are they more ridiculous than mine? I'm sure that's impossible.
I did make one little change before we locked, but it's so very boring.
You did?
I now have Gabriel over Taylor on the bench.
Okay.
And Pope over Ramsdale on the bench. So that will probably change nothing. But when we were talking about Burnley and I had Taylor, I was like, why do I have Taylor if I don't think he's a good pick? I'll just get the Arsenal player and get a goalkeeper. Schmeichel will play anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, your starting 11 is going to play because they've got 2 fixtures, unless there's a long-term injury that we don't know about. But yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? My team is either going to be like a 10,000 game week rank or like a 6 million, and I'm very envious of those with plenty of double game week players. So
mate, I love that the Brighton Tottenham match is first up as well because it's just that's this week in a nutshell. If Kane and Son go and get a couple of returns each, it's not over, but it doesn't look so good for those of us that free hit them out.
Who knows? But if I watch this match in a minute, we're going to stay for the team news in half an hour's time, by the way. So stick around. And we're also going to have a deep, meaningful conversation about, predicting points and everything. We'll get back to that in a minute. But yeah, the Spurs match at 12:30, if that doesn't go well for people who are not free hitting, free hitters are going to have an absolute field day. And Man United Norwich next at 3 p.m. Oh my goodness me. That is going to be the main worry fixture for me, and I will be hiding.
I might just ignore it until later this evening. Like when I captained Cancelo I think it was like Christmas. I just obviously helps having a baby because you do actually have other stuff to do. But I just went on a walk when the match was on and didn't check it till afterwards. And unfortunately, he did well that match. It feels like another one of those days where it's like set your team, go do other stuff, and just come back and get it over with later.
Do you fancy doing match of the day challenge?
No. Only because I go to bed about 2 hours before that, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to get that sleep in before the baby wakes up, don't you? So,
yeah.
No, it's completely fair. Yeah, so a really, really hectic day. Let's have a look at the fixtures for the game week because it's pretty spread out, isn't it? We've got Spurs starting at 12:30 on the Saturday, and then we go all the way down to Thursday with ending at Burnley against Southampton, but it's almost like a drip feed of games against Seb, and I'm not massive fans of these game weeks because there's so much going on, and it's one game at a time, and the rank changes just steadily, and you either have a really bad start and then a good finish, or the other way around. or in my case, bad start and a bad finish. But yeah, that Liverpool Man United game on Tuesday, I'm excited for that. I'm not 100% sure what to even think of it. Like, do Liverpool blow Man United away like they did earlier in the season with that 5-0 result? Or is it going to be more of a cagey affair, do you reckon?
I will take Salah scoring lots of points, Bruno scoring lots of points, Tellez taking penalties. It's all fine with me.
That's such an
Lots of goals,
FPL
please.
answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I guess from a real football sense, that thing I said earlier, where I think Man United very, very roughly have basically had the same defense as Brighton. And I don't think we would expect Brighton to lose this 6-0. And yet it feels like Man United might lose it 6-0. So realistically, I think it's a comprehensive 2-0 Liverpool, something like that.
Goodness me, yeah. I imagine it would be a little bit worse than that because just that City Liverpool game, they was just so good, both of them. Pales in comparison to Man United standards. So part of the reason why I wasn't free hitting, but I don't know. Who just knows? I don't know anymore. I've lost all sense of what I think about football. So let's just see. Right, let's just have the responses in the chat. Nuclear benched James for Shah. I think that's a pretty sensible move, to be honest. Played Pope over Dubravka. Since have Newcastle cover, I think that's perfectly sensible. P9K5 sold Salah for Son and brought in Bruno Guimaraes and captained him, taking the leaf out of Az's book.
I'm going to say it's Az in disguise.
It's Az in disguise. No, interesting moves. I think that Son fixture, the Brighton fixture for Son, for Spurs, personally, I think it's prime Son pointer because it's Brighton who have possession and don't do much of it, and Spurs, absolutely fantastic counter-attacking side. And, we've seen what Kane can do. Is it 6 assists in the last 2 matches for basically setting up Son? I think he could have a field day. But other people are saying it could be a tighter affair, as doesn't think Spurs will demolish Brighton. What's your thoughts?
Is it 2-0 earlier in the season? Not that that's necessarily enough to go on. I really like Brighton generally as an outfit. There's a bit of an affinity because of the old, expected goals, but never actually scoring any goals is always fun to support them for that reason. But I like Graham Potter a lot. I like what they do with the limited resources. It's, a similar situation to some other clubs where he gets a lot out of a team that is well constructed, but really is not competitive with a lot of the top teams in the league. Spurs, much improved under Conte, but they still really rely on that Son, Kane, and now Kulusevski to make things happen and to arguably, overperform their numbers, but overperform as in because Kane and Son are good, not because they're lucky. I think if it lines up the way you think, where Brighton keep some relatively dull possession, then Tottenham may well be able to pick them off. But are they going to do that 3, 4, 5 times? Or are we going to see maybe, the 2-0 from earlier in the season? I personally would possibly prefer Kane. I wonder if there'll be less space for Son and maybe more opportunity for Kane to score in this type of match. Although maybe I'm influenced because earlier, the 2-0 in the season, Kane scored and Son didn't.
I mean, that's music to my ears as a Kane owner. And I've gone through so much Son pain recently. I think I was one of those terrible people that sold Son for a hit to get Kane and Kulu. So, yeah. I'm losing credibility by the moment.
In a similar vein, I would not now try and sell, say, Salah for Son. I know someone just said they did that. Genuinely good luck. But it feels a bit like the whole must lose Son to get Kane and then Son. It was even and then Son, outperformed him slightly. It's just the same again in reverse. You can keep swapping all season. And as we mentioned, if it's an average that goes on, you'll end up, actually underperforming because you'll miss when they overperform to hit their mean when they're underperforming. So
yeah, I think you have to have an additional reason to do it because for me it was changing team structure. I think there was a flood of midfield options for the coming game weeks. I think that's probably still applies until the end of the season. So getting a forward representative in a stable Kane is it benefited my side. It didn't do me too much damage in points, but at the same time I did lose out. It probably wasn't a very great move, but I feel happy about the structure of the team. And if that's the additional reason, then fine.
I mean, I would love Kane. I'm just not going to give up Son to do it. And I don't think I'm going to have Kane all season now. I might give away Son towards the end of the season for some other players. I think I'll lose Kulusevski for one of the sort of Maddison, Foden, Havertz gang.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because I wonder whether we actually keep Spurs assets because that double game week in 36 isn't particularly good. But at the same time, the fixtures around that double game week are absolutely fantastic. I think they play Burnley and Norwich in the last 2 game weeks of the season. But even so, I wouldn't be too unhappy about playing Spurs assets in that double game week, even if it is 2 difficult fixtures. Because, the last 6 game weeks, Spurs have scored 25 goals. I think that's from 7 games. Just to put that into perspective, Brighton have scored 3 in the same period. I'm not 100% sure how many games that consists of, but 6 game weeks worth. It's just Spurs are in such good attacking form. They could probably get a few goals past any of the major teams, as they did against City. He scored 3 against City, didn't they, when they beat them? So yeah, we'll see what happens. But it's really difficult to remove Spurs assets for me in such good form.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely fair enough. I think the double's an interesting one because it's 2 tougher fixtures than you'd like. But maybe it's not that far off from being similar to Man United, Norwich, and Liverpool, because that's one very tough fixture and one very easy one. But Man United are generally a poorer team. So a better team having 2 slightly difficult fixtures, but not as hard as Liverpool, maybe it roughly evens out. And, Man United don't have, maybe Ronaldo, but they don't really have a Son or Kane in terms of you wouldn't care if Spurs were getting battered all game because you just know that one attack and Son or Kane can earn you some points.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just go back to the structure of the game week, and if we think about non-free hitters like my team and free hitters versus your team, how far ahead would you want to be at the end of this weekend, let's say Sunday evening, to not even be worried about what happens when the likes of Chelsea play on Wednesday, Liverpool on Tuesday, City on Wednesday? Because I suppose the key fixtures for free hitters are the Man United game against Norwich, Leicester, Newcastle, I imagine, and probably Arsenal, Southampton, maybe. Those are 3 key games. You've got some more coming up later. Leicester, Everton is particularly good for Leicester free hitters, and Newcastle Palace is also a reasonable one. I'm not too fussed about Burnley, Southampton, but going back to the original question, how much of a success is the free hit going to depend on the results of this Man United Norwich game, Southampton Arsenal, and Newcastle Leicester?
I feel like the answer you want is yes, lots, and it's over tonight if you don't get lots of points. But realistically, it doesn't matter when the matches are occurring. And I try very hard not to sort of look at my score on a Saturday night or Sunday night and dictate my feelings towards the game week based on that, because it doesn't matter until the end of Thursday. Of course, by Wednesday night, you're going to have a good idea of where you're going to end up. But Saturday night feels a bit early. And, if Ronaldo gets sent off and Fernandes does nothing against Norwich, okay, that's a bad result. But then for all you know, Chris Wood goes and gets his hat-trick against Palace on Wednesday night. And it all, I get the same points just from an unexpected avenue, and it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to try and not waste too many happy or sad feelings until Thursday, at least. Although saying that, looking at the fixture, Burnley, Southampton, I very much want to start Adams now. It's too late. I have Salah, but
just that one sentence Wood gets his hat trick against Palace. That's probably emphasised to me that I'm quite happy not free hitting this week.
So what's more likely? Chris Wood scores an open play goal against the rotated Leicester team and gets a penalty against Palace, or Ronaldo scores a brace against Norwich. Which one would you back more?
Probably the Ronaldo one, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, fair.
But it's in one game, and you're talking. I feel like you're leading me down the garden path here, because you're going, here's 2 outcomes in 2 different games, whereas that's one game for Ronaldo. But the prestige of the player against the bottom team in the league.
I think that's exactly the way we think of it. Like you say, it's I know who got the assist are often big on this. The way you frame questions in FPL can lead you to 2 different answers. I'm captaining Ronaldo, so clearly I think Ronaldo has a better chance. But if Ronaldo hasn't scored against Norwich and then Wood gets a penalty against Leicester, I probably suddenly feel an awful lot better about Wood and that Palace game coming up, because I've got points in the bank and I've got an okay fixture to come, whereas Ronaldo would be the opposite situation. Realistically, the chances probably aren't that far separated from each other, and I don't know if it matters.
It's really interesting, actually. I think I would stay strong on the Ronaldo answer, because I think Wood hasn't proven that he can score in consecutive games, again, regardless of opponent, because I don't think Newcastle are that strong attacking wise. Whereas with a team like Man United, who are very Jekyll and Hyde, when they have a good fixture, when the team capitulates, when Ronaldo scores hat tricks, he's proven that he can score multiple goals in a game. When that environment is suitable, I think he's probably more likely to get, to fill his boots in one game, rather than, let's say, a lesser player to consecutively, reliably score in consecutive games.
Yeah, I mean, the consecutive thing aside, because I feel like that's a red herring with the whole, it's kind of the form question, right? They're independent events. Oh yeah, of course you carry confidence, you carry whatever that is, but that's very hard to quantify. So statistically speaking, they're independent events, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I've captained Ronaldo, so I entirely agree with you. And if you told me Newcastle are going to win 6-0 this weekend and Man United are going to win 6-0, who do you think scored more points? I know what my answer is.
Yeah, 100%. I love and hate talking to you, Seb, because everything I say, I almost have to check myself. I'm not saying something completely stupid.
That sounds terrible. I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I mean, I say loads of. I contradict myself all the time, which I think, obviously, not on purpose by any means, but I think it's really important when we're talking about fantasy football or anything, not to just present what you say as the answer, and therefore then have to defend that position. I think it's much more interesting to ask questions and, of course, put a proposal forward and then allow it to be ripped apart and together come to a better solution. So, like on Scoutcast, I think I said I would captain Fernandes. I think I had Kane over Salah. Of course, at the time, those are things I believed and I was recommending it. I've spent more time looking at it. We've got a bit more information, and I flipped on both those things. I don't know which one is right. I'm currently backing the one I've got, but I'm very open to being told that's stupid and explained why.
It's a really good point, and it's exactly the same with presenting numbers, with presenting stats, because you can paint a picture with numbers in any way you want, and I think that's something that's used in business quite a lot to get deals done, things like that. It's exactly the same in FPL. You can be convinced on a player by someone painting a picture which is positive and leaving out the detrimental elements of that picture. So it's really interesting.
Like, we often talk about numbers in FPL as if they're objective and the truth and you can't argue with them. And in of themselves, they are, because they're just drawn from fact. But so is watching someone score a goal and calling that one goal. It's what we choose to do with that. And I guess the eye test is more susceptible to our opinions and our biases than the stats are. But the stats are still very, very open to that. You can look for something and you can find it. To use this example, and I don't mean this is being looked for or anything, but Bruno Guimaraes, his numbers in the Premier League so far are considerably better than I expected. Like, they're quite competitive. It might be like 0.35 XGI per 90, something like that. But he started 4 matches. And if you then look at his history when he was at Lyon, he scored like 4 goals in 3 seasons, something like that. If you presented either of those pieces of information independently, they make 2 opposing arguments. I'm not saying either one of them is right. I'm just saying that the numbers are contradicting each other there. So you can't just go with the numbers without understanding some further context.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to apply the current context to that story that you've painted, because, the likes of Willock and Fraser being out also enhances starting appeal. You go, right, I don't need to worry about only 4 starts in 7 appearances. That sort of is out the window. I feel like he's going to play both games. And as you say, the stats look actually quite good. I think it's 11 shots in the last 6 game weeks and 7 of those are in the box, which you compare that to Shelby, who is a box-to-box midfielder, but he shoots from outside the box. If you want someone who's going to score from within the box, like a Willock it tends to do, then Guimaraes is demonstrating the underlying numbers that represent that possibility. And, people bringing him in, a lot of people are doing that out of nowhere, but there must be a reason for it. And this is the issue with groupthink, that you also think that because other people are doing it, it must be right. But they also must have come to a conclusion themselves about why it's right. But then it's important to differentiate following people that have a legitimate reason for doing it or following other people that are just following others doing it. So I find it fascinating.
It's a similar conversation to the whole decision versus outcome thing.
Yeah.
They're independent from whether it went well or not. You can make a good decision that goes badly and you can make a bad decision that goes well. Similarly with Bruno Guimaraes, if you have a good reason to bring him in and it goes badly, fine. You've made good reasoning, which you can repeat in the future, and on average you will come out up. If you've got him for poor reasoning, well, it seems unlikely to carry forward in success in the future, no matter how it goes this week. And I mean, genuinely, I don't think Bruno Guimaraes is a bad shout. It's clearly not what I would do because I had a free hit and I haven't done it. But I don't think he's an awful, awful shout. John Joe Shelby would probably be a poor shout. I think there's every chance he does fine. I think the situation where I was discussing with Ours on Twitter is my surprise was more not Bruno Guimaraes himself, but more the fact that Az isn't free hitting. I think he did it with a free transfer. No, I don't quite know his situation. If he could only afford like Bruno Guimaraes, maybe fair enough. But I think my question was, would I have done something different with the transfer itself? if I had to bring in a player to captain for this week and I had one transfer to do it and some money in the bank, I don't know if he would have been my first choice. And I guess that's the gamble that Az is going for, unless I'm wrong on the assumptions of value and whatnot.
I think he had 2 free transfers, and he did someone who was, I think it was Doherty, up to Cancelo, and to fund that, he needed to downgrade a midfielder.
Oh, okay. So I might have gone a Chelsea defender. I have Rudiger and James in my normal team, and I want to get Laporte next week for Doherty. So I might have gone like, say, Laporte, and then tried to push that midfield slot to say maybe Maddison and captain Maddison. I don't know if there's a huge difference, but I think I would back that more myself.
Just you naming all of these people, I'm really, really frightened. There's so many. When you're playing FPL and you look at effective ownerships and you're like, oh my god, I don't want this person to do well this week. And normally there's more of those people than the amount that you have in your own FPL team. I feel like I'm in massive danger zone this week. Maddison is probably going to have a high effective ownership with the captaincy. All of the Man United guys, it's literally going to be don't do well, don't do well, don't do well, don't do well. I'm going to be frightened.
Frightened. Let me put it this way, right? So log off until 5 p.m. You log back on and you see 1-0 Norwich. You've won.
I can't do that. I need to watch Spurs, and then I can't do that. I'm a masochist. I just like.
I mean, isn't that what it's about, right? Though FPL, we talk about models and predictions and psychology and people doing clever things and silly things and whatever. It's a marketing tool to make the Premier League more engaging. And my goodness, does it work? And I probably won't watch Burnley Southampton for aforementioned reasons, but in the past, I probably would have watched Burnley Southampton. I'm not going to watch that normally. Not that it's a poor game, but I very much enjoy watching and analysing leads, and I enjoy watching the bigger games. Some of the matches I can find something better to do with my time than 90 minutes. But FPL gives you that emotional involvement that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, Florin in chat, how about you just be happy about your own team scoring? Yeah, why not? Just ignore everyone else.
Yeah. New to FPL, I see. Yeah, you're completely right, but that's really difficult. Tell me how.
That's a really good segue. Let's talk about the emotion that we suffer as FPL managers, because emotion also can apply to this variance, this lack of the omitted variables that we basically don't have the capacity to gather when we look at our models. Emotion is the missing thing in FPL that we can't predict. It's also the thing that we as FPL managers go through. Particularly apt with this game week because it's a long one. You're going to be suffering highs and lows throughout the season, and emotion is seemingly it's judging to be a bad thing. You're meant to be so reserved and just level-headed about what you're going through. And I find that the biggest hypocrisy, the biggest catch-22 with FPL is that when we plan our teams, we are meant to plan them with just pure logic, with pure optimized decisions. There should be no emotion in it. And obviously that's not how everyone plays it, but that's how you win at FPL. Whereas when you live FPL, when you watch the football, when you want your team to do well, it is pure emotion. You want stuff to happen because it's going to benefit you, it's going to make you feel good. And at the end of the day, that massive disparity in how FPL is just a recipe for disaster sometimes, but it's also a self-fulfilling cycle that you are the greatest logical mind ever, or I've just really lucked out this week and it's all luck and it's all bad luck. I just find it really interesting.
I think that's wonderfully put, and it's so true. Let's just assume that this is correct. Finishing in the top 50k is skill, finishing in the top 1k is luck. You can roughly get a good rank. Anything above that then is just open to variance and some lucky things happening or not. So if we assume that is true, and obviously me and you on here, our purpose here is mostly to profess how to improve your rank or how to beat someone in a mini league. That's what we're trying to do. So of course we lean more into the emotionless, follow the model, whether that is a literal mathematical model or whether it's watching watching Match of the Day, whatever it is. Find your rules and play according to your rules, and don't deviate from that, because that is how you will achieve success. And refine your rule set. Don't refine your sort of implementation of the rules. But that is only because we are mechanically trying to say this is how you will finish higher. That isn't what FPL is about. FPL is only partially about that. And unless you're going to win your mini league, unless you're going to finish number 1 overall, or unless you're going to come on YouTube and talk about it, that probably matters less than whether you enjoy your weekend. So despite us not talking about it nearly as much, because I don't know if people are as interested, or, that's not what we're here for, the more important thing is, does it ruin your weekend or does it enhance your weekend? So sure, I'm still not going to say triple captain, I think of a bad player, Jay Rodriguez this weekend, even if you're a big Burnley fan. Cool, that could be jokes. It also has quite a big downside, because I don't think you'll get a good rank or satisfaction out of that. But hey, definitely hedge yourself with some enjoyment, or play for enjoyment. And that also happens on the flip side as well, right? When it goes badly, protect yourself from that mental anguish a little bit, whether that means literally with your selections or with your approach to it. And I'm not going to profess, everyone's an individual, I'm not going to profess how you should approach the mental side of FPL with mental health in mind. For myself, often it's not sitting through all the games. It's maybe taking myself away from it. It helps when weeks come quicker, or it helps sharing on Twitter. Some people don't like it when people share on Twitter, but that's why the mute button exists. Other people need it. It's their outlet to go, I did well or I did badly. Whatever tools work for you, absolutely make the most of those. And I extend that to team selection. If you're going to have a better time captaining Kane this weekend, no matter result, or maybe he scores and that will be better than if he doesn't score for you relatively, absolutely go with that. Who cares if you finish 52,000 or 51,000?
Absolutely, and well put. I think the disassociation between from the footballing action, if it really comes back to associating the skill that you have, because if you have a bad game week, sometimes I think we are too harsh on ourselves. We go, I'm bad at this game, because it's a reflection on your ability to make decisions at the end of the day, rather than if you support a team, it's a reflection on how your team has performed. It's not a reflection on you. You haven't done anything. You just watched a game. Whereas in FPL, we actually made a logical decision that will benefit us if it goes right, or won't benefit us if it goes wrong. And if it goes wrong, you feel bad because you made that decision, and it's a personal reflection on your ability. So I completely get what you're saying about if you just ignore some of the games, if you just log back in at 5 p.m. and see what the results are, the so much information to digest that actually it makes that emotion less. It makes it difficult to analyze what has actually gone on and determine whether you've been lucky or unlucky, which is basically the reason for feeling sad or happy. So yeah, it's a really interesting one.
And one last thing on that, if I may as well. I think we talk a lot about biases and how I think FPL is a really good vehicle to discuss our cognitive biases. A bit like the emotion thing, where if you want to optimize your performance, of course you remove emotion. But if you want to optimize your weekend, you include emotion. Like that with biases. It's not about overcoming and defeating and never acting on bias, because that is how your brain is wired to work. You literally cannot avoid cognitive biases. That is the point.
Yeah.
What you can do is be aware of them, and be aware when one is having too much of an influence on your thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I'm not being rude. I'm just checking for early team news. I can't see any yet, but if we do see any, we'll bring it to you straight away. But it's only 2 minutes before.
I'd imagine the Spurs team is pretty straightforward, isn't it? It's going to be Sonke and Kulusevski. It's going to be Bentancur and Højbjerg in the middle, with, what do you reckon, Emerson Royal and Reguilon, Davies. I forget who else will play at the back, but the usual back three, Lloris in goal.
Dyer, Romero. Yeah, I mean, it should be pretty unchanged. With the injuries, with the fact that they want to win all of these Premier League games to get top four, there's no way that he's changing it up. So I would imagine these team news isn't going to be particularly,
Brighton double this week. There's going to be someone with Neil Maupay, or Sanchez probably appears in a few non-free hit teams.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a difficult double for them, though. Crikey. Save points, but no clean sheet. He might be the biggest save pointer of this week, I think, Sanchez.
The save point is a funny one. I'd be interested in your opinion on that, because, of course, you would think more shots faced equals more saves, and then you want some clean sheets too, and there's a perfect balance between some clean sheets but conceding enough shots. But I find on an individual basis that so often doesn't hold up. For example, when Liverpool beat Man United 5-0 early in the season, De Gea made 3 saves. That's nowhere near enough to make up for conceding 5. And I found myself in a similar situation this week when I was like, oh, if I get De Gea, he keeps a clean sheet against Norwich, he makes 8 saves against Liverpool. I'm laughing. I was like, well, why do I think he's going to make 8 saves necessarily?
Uh, the, the problem with save points is that you're not going to, like in other games, you don't have half points, you don't have quarter points. And I think, FPL have come up with a way of just keeping it to integers, to 1-2 points. But that means that you do miss out if you do 90% of that meter and you miss out on the 6th save because you don't get that extra point. And I think that's the annoying thing when we do suffer it. But at the same time, save points are just basically a mechanism for improving the bonus point system for goalkeepers whenever they keep a clean sheet, and they're also a what's the word, like when you've had a bad week but it's like, here, I'll throw you a bone for something. What's the word
like
for that?
consolation.
Yeah, consolation points. How many times have we seen our goalkeepers get 3 points in a week when they've conceded like a goal but they've got a save point? Consolation points and improve the bonus point system. I think it's fine. I just think maybe we put too much emphasis on the save points.
And I mean, the one you want is when they make 9 saves and keep a clean sheet. But predicting that is impossible because you've got to predict they can concede lots of chances, but not high quality ones. And maybe, I know we discussed this on Twitter, that's where big chances, small chances comes in a little bit over something like XG. Ultimately, with saves, like you say, it's a threshold problem of, 2 goalkeepers could both make 6 saves over 3 weeks, but one does it 2-2-2 and one does it 0-0-6. The latter goalkeeper comes out better in terms of points, probably with bonus as well, and yet arguably they performed similarly over the course of those 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you phrased it like that, because I think that the likelihood of a goalkeeper getting 9 saves and a clean sheet is almost an impossibility. It's like when you're from a prediction standpoint, because either you have a goalkeeper that tends to make lots of saves and has high XG prevented, for example, but also concedes so many shots that he's unlikely to keep a clean sheet, which means that in order for that to actually happen, he just needs to get lucky about certain teams missing shots, loads of a disproportionate amount of shots from outside the box, and he's got to throw in a few big saves in that match, and then he's got everything, maybe even a penalty save as well. But it doesn't seem like you can predict that happening, because save points and clean sheets are basically mutually exclusive from a prediction standpoint.
And I mean, so to revisit something I was just saying there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe, like I prefer XG to big chances, but you put some brilliant stuff out on big chances. From a goalkeeper's point of view, I actually wonder if I would reverse my position and say 2 goalkeepers both concede an XG of 1, but one of those goalkeepers concedes it in a couple of big chances and one concedes it with a bunch of small chances. Arguably, I do want that goalkeeper that concedes the small chances, because from an attacking point of view, it makes no difference as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But from a goalkeeper's point of view, because I get rewarded for making saves, that is valuable information to have.
We'll come back to that talk in a minute, but the team lineups were out for Spurs, Brighton. As we've sort of alluded to, very little change, no change for Spurs. All of the key men start. Emerson Royale at right wing back, and Reguilon at left wing back. Same centre back, Bentancur, Højbjerg in middle, Kulusevski, Kane, Son. So all nothing out of the ordinary. Brighton's a little bit different. We've got Sanchez in goal, Veltman, Dunk, Cucurella, Lamptey. So it looks like they're playing a back 4 with Cucurella on the left, Lamptey on the right. Might be wrong about that. Oh no, the lineups they've got a back 3. So it looks like Veltman, Dunk, and Cucurella a left centre back. Not 100%.
I mean, Cucurella would be left wing back, wouldn't he? Although, so I'm looking at SofaScore, and their lineups often change, because fair enough. I don't know if they're always correct. They have Pascal Gross at left wing back. He played right wing back, didn't he, when Lamptey was out before? But
yeah,
does
that's
that
what I'm
work
looking
better
at.
as a back 4, like you say, with Dunk, Veltman, Lamptey, Cucurella, and then would you have Bissouma and Wepo, Gross, with Trossard, Caicedo, and McAllister? I wonder if that works better as a sort of 4-5-1, 4-3-3.
Yeah, I wonder whether they've got that wrong. I think it looks like a back 4 to me. I think Gross probably plays in midfield, and I imagine they play. Yeah, I reckon it's a 4-2-3-1 from my perspective.
I mean, I would happy to be wrong on that by someone who knows more, and they played Dan Burn at left wing back for a while, so I wouldn't be overly surprised, but I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean Webster not playing. I wonder if he's no, he's not injured. He's on the bench, so I don't know what he's done wrong. Maybe it's just a change in tactic because Spurs tough cookie. Like maybe they've come up with a bespoke tactic for it. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess like if you're dropping Webster, you're unlikely to do it for tactical reasons and play a left wing back at centre back. You're playing Spurs, who their power comes from the centre midfield in Højbjerg and Bentancur are both very good, and then from the front three. If you're playing a back three, are you just exposing yourself to one-on-ones all over the place? Whereas if you play a four, and also then say tuck some of your midfielders back, are you maybe lining up in a five even against the three attackers of Spurs when you're defending?
It's interesting. I think if they do play a 4-2-3-1, I think it suits Kane more than Son.
I
Interesting
agree.
for owners because in the tighter games, Kane tends to do well, and I wonder whether Potter has changed this up because of the vulnerabilities that they've had against Spurs in the past, and Son is just. I think it was against Brighton a couple of seasons ago. He scored 4 goals. It might have been Southampton. I always get muddled up. It was like the game before they beat Man United 8-2. Was it last season? I think it might have been last season.
Was 8-2 was that the second game of the season or something?
Was it 8-2 or 6-2?
Whatever it was.
It was a big win.
I don't think it was 8, but yeah. That was like the second game of the season, wasn't it? Because I remember not having like Son or Kane or anyone, and then that going very badly.
Yeah. I think I had both, and that was a really good start to the season.
Oh.
But I know, unbelievable. It capitulated from then.
Where did you finish last season?
Not great. I think it was like just under 50k, so it wasn't great.
Mate, I was like 130k.
Was it
50K? You got me there.
I might have made that up actually. Hang on.
Their last season was such a disaster. I mean, I'm going to pretend to blame Leeds and go because it's the first time I had my club in the Premier League when I'm playing FPL. I avoided our players for so long in an attempt to not be biased towards us. I was biased against us. I'm going to put it down to that, but frankly, just not good. Not a good season.
I just completely forgotten where I finished last season. It's been oh no, I can't even check. Because the game's updating. Outrageous. I think it was
first, mate. The second. You finished second. You were so close to winning
second,
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everyone follow me. Yeah. I want to go back to that conversation we were having earlier about the variance and the reasons for variance in players, because that was quite an interesting discussion. And I often try and so like from my perspective, as I said, I work as an underwriter, and when we try and basically my job is to try and predict when people are going to crash their cars, and the things that we look at are information about you, but the fundamental metric we want and would be make lots of money for, or be able to protect our customers correctly and charge you the right premium, is to understand what your risk-taking personality is. But there's no way of understanding that. So what we do is use proxies like how old you are, and all of this sort of stuff that don't actually mean anything, to determine what your risk-taking personality is. Right. That's part of the insurance conversation because that's boring. Then it's related to football. The reason why we can't accurately predict how a footballer is how many goals they're going to score, when they're going to score, when they're in a bad mood, whether that's going to be detrimental to their FPL returns or whatever, whether they're up for it this week. If we could predict that, that would be absolutely fantastic. But in FPL, we use stats. We use previous game weeks. Oh, have they had lots of shots? Have they been really creative? Have they been in the right positions? Have they done that sort of stuff to try and use those sorts of factors as proxies to understand whether they're showing enough intent, or whether they're getting in the right positions, or whether that means that they're going to score or assist going forwards. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a proxy for understanding what's going through their head.
So I guess that's like anything though, in terms of whenever we're trying to predict something, all we can do is use historical data to project forwards based on a profile we understand is correlated with you. So, when you're looking at insurance, that's the driver. You can't know if on any given day the driver is going to break up with their partner or drink or whatever, but you can know that on average, these things happen to these people who are similar to you in the past, and thus we can assign a percentage chance to that happening to you. We have no idea if it will happen to you specifically, but if we get 1,000 people like you, we have a good chance of being right and thus not going bankrupt and even making a profit, but also being able to provide insurance for you at a fair rate when you need it. In a football sense, I guess what we're going is we don't know if, and I guess this comes back to why, like, as a football manager, confidence and how players feel is incredibly important to me. As an FPL manager, it is incredibly unimportant to me because I can influence it as a manager of a real team, for example. I can receive information on it and I can do something with it. I can try and mold it. I can use it. As an FPL manager, I can't do anything with it. And I can't even judge it that accurately because do we really judge a player's mental state when we see them for 90 minutes on a pitch? Or do we judge their mental state when we're having dinner with them and training with them and texting them? And a manager has so much more insight into that. You know, we don't know why Lacazette is away this weekend. He may be ill, a family member may be ill, he may be injured, something worse may have happened, or he may have been disciplined in training and they're hiding it, whatever. We just don't know. So we almost can't take something like that into our decision-making without a serious leap of guessing. And I would say that leap is too much to factor in enough. And then when that thing does matter, when a player is in confidence or is like just in brilliant form, to use that word, because it's a good descriptor, it's just not a good predictor, we don't need to know why because we see the outcome. And we can then use that outcome. So for example, like you, it's car accidents. I don't necessarily need to know why. I just need to know that it happens to predict future events. So I don't need to know that Kane just loves striking a ball in a certain way or had a really good breakfast and that's his secret to scoring goals, because I'll just know he scores goals. Goals are a rare event and they're random. So we can't really use that. What we do is we use, loads and loads of samples of who takes shots from what positions and how often they turn into goals. We see if you're shooting from a similar position and thus what your chance of scoring is. What we can then also do is we go, okay, I acknowledge that Kane is a better than average finisher. So when I get his XG, and one of the criticisms that I don't support of XG is that it doesn't factor in finishing, it's not meant to, because the point is it does what I'm about to go into, which is if I know Kane's XG for the season is 15, therefore an average finisher would score 15 goals over time, given those chances. But I know that Kane is an above average finisher, so I might model for 17 goals. That's good. And I need XG not to take finishing into account to be able to make that calculation. And I think that was a very long-winded way of sort of expanding on what you put much more succinctly. But I think we don't need to know those things because we have the consequence of those things and we can judge and model based on that.
Yeah, I think personally XG is a fantastic metric for measuring the accuracy for the statistical model versus the number of goals over a long period of time. But the interesting thing is that as FPL managers, we're only really looking at 4 game weeks in advance, 4 maybe 6 game weeks in advance, or maybe even the current game week if we're free hitting or anything like that, which makes using metrics like that so difficult to actually come up with an accurate conclusion about who you want in your team. I also find it interesting that we almost have this sandbox of information. And as you mentioned there, we've got the outcome, which are the goals and the assists. Like bundle them into a box and throw in lots of different bits of information like, the number of shots that they had recently, or the number of shots in the box, or, what their average position was, and throw all of that stuff in with it. The only conclusions you can make about whether that person scored a goal or why that person scored a goal is with the bits of information you throw in with it. And you go, he had lots of shots, or his average position was high. And you draw that conclusion between those things. Everything else you don't throw into the same environment, all the factors, all the reasons you don't throw in to that same environment just completely get ignored. And that's something that we really want. If we had a perfect model, we'd throw every single bit of information we knew about this player in, and then we'd be able to accurately perform. The other thing about football is that it is a massively volatile event. If you had 1,000 Chris Woods, if you had 500 Bruno Fernandes, if you had, millions of the same players, you would more accurately and run. This is why people run simulations for events and stuff. You'd more accurately get an average outcome. This is why people love football, though, because it's a volatile event. People can score 3 or 4 goals in a game, and then you rerun the game, and they maybe score 1. Anything can happen. It's a severity game. If you talk about tennis, if you talk about cricket, tennis, you're hitting thousands and thousands of shots in a match, and one of them could be bad, and the other ones could be great. Whereas a footballer taking a shot, maybe he's got like 5 shots in a match. He only needs one of them to be really good to score, but it's a much higher proportion of the amount that they actually do in a match.
Oh, completely. And I mean, that is both one of the biggest strengths and biggest weaknesses of football, where the deciding event in a football match is down to a huge amount of randomness, but is basically the most important thing in a match and can decide the entire outcome of 90 minutes. Whereas you look at things that effectively you get 1 point for scoring 1 goal in football, in terms of you get, 5 and then 2 extra points for scoring a try and converting it in rugby, 6 runs, 4 runs, or, obviously 1, 2 runs, whatever in cricket. The chance for scoring points is, if you'll allow me to use that term to catch every method of scoring in a sport, the opportunity for scoring points is so much higher in other sports like NFL, like cricket, like basketball, like rugby, that it tends to smooth out a lot more of the randomness. And thus you see many fewer upsets. You see dominant teams be a lot more dominant because the little slips here and there are made up for because they just happen, because the non-slips happen so much more regularly. Whereas in football, because a goal is so rare and relies so much on randomness, that anyone can beat Man City. Leeds can beat Man City with 2 shots with Stuart Dallas, despite Man City having 1 more player than us for most of the match and being the better team, because that's how football works. If you made the goal the entire size of, the end of the pitch, Man City would maybe never lose.
Yeah, I'd really like to see that.
That or John Joe Shelby would be the best player in the world. To shoot from everywhere. But that's the joy of football. And that's why, I think it's why we have these conversations, because the models work better in other sports. Doesn't mean they can't work for football. I think they're just a lot harder to build. And it just comes down to that idea of trying to smooth it and trying to turn 1,000 events into the most likely outcome of 1 event. And you know that will be wrong, even 49% of the time. But you have to go with the 51%. You can't not. It is irrational not to, unless you have more information. And, the models aren't perfect. The models are the best we have, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. People are always improving them. XG, for example, I like XG because more than anything else, it's just really easy. It's one number that combine so many pieces of information that I could look up myself and try and work out and give different weights to, but I don't want to. I'm lazy. I want to just look at one number. But there are different XG models. There's the StatsBomb model, which is generally considered the best. There's the Opta model, which I know they've made some improvements to. There's other ones that I can't even think of right now. I think the StatsBomb one comes from Understat, actually. But yeah, there are different models. And any given match, any given event, you will see different XG values all around Twitter because they come from different places. So then you have to choose, well, which model do I prefer? And then you have to go and look at the inputs, and you basically have to decide that you like a shot from here more than someone else, or you think that goalkeeper positioning is more important. And it just comes back to what we're talking about anyway, right? Your judge of what the important events are on a football field. We're just outsourcing that to someone else who hopefully is smarter to build an XG model that I can rely on. But I also trust they will improve it over time. And I also trust that I can gain an edge by maybe going, okay, Kane has this XG, and I know he slightly outperforms it, so I'll give him a slightly higher chance of scoring. But I also know that, and I know they do this on the captaincy video a lot, Brighton are particularly weak from this certain type of shot or this certain area. And provided I have enough data to prove that, and it's not just last week, if Kane is also good in that area, I maybe know that his XG for this match is maybe even underreporting his ability more than usual. So I can build that into my own model as well. And when I talk about models, it can just be how me and you watch a football match. That's a model. I'm watching a match and I'm assigning values to the events I see. And some people will assign, value to confidence and stuff. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I think that's genuine. I just don't think I can read it enough to use it.
I must apologise because I zoned in and out of that.
That's probably fair.
No. Just imagining like what football would be like with a football pitch the size of the entire baseline, and also like who would be good if the goal was like 2 foot wide. I'm just trying to like, how would football be played? Like you'd have to play with like 15 goalkeepers and stuff like that, or maybe like an ice hockey.
You know a change I would really like to see, which is sort of in those realms but a bit more realistic? Make the penalty area a logical shape.
I wonder
why is getting fouled basically next to the corner flag the same as getting fouled in the 6-yard box? Why do I get the same chance to score a goal?
So you'd make it like a sort of like a V shape or something.
Yeah. So like, is it in hockey where it's a shape more like that? And then obviously in hockey as well, you get like, you don't just get a free shot at goal. It's a different event. That's another change I would make. I would not give penalties. I would give an event that's more equal to the quality of the chance that awarded the penalty.
It would be, so you're basically you're wanting a baseball field shaped
Yeah,
penalty
that's a
area.
reasonable. Yeah, so it's narrow next to the goal and then widens out like
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Because if I'm 2 yards from the goal, if I'm on the byline, my chance of scoring, yes, I could cut it back, of course, but my chance of scoring is so much lower than if I'm exactly the same distance from the goal, but in front of it.
I wonder
And
how
yet,
they
if I get
came up
fouled
with.
there, I get the same chance of scoring.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's completely illogical. Yes, you can score from the the touch line with a bit of spin, but it's the XG value.
I get it, like, for simplicity or whatever, but I think it's just an example of, some things in football are a bit archaic and we could improve them and improve the sport in the same way that we're trying to with VAR. And I know VAR has problems. But yeah, or don't change the shape of the penalty area, just change the thing you get awarded for winning a penalty. Because
true.
Getting fouled, getting fouled right on the corner with 5 players between you and the goal, and then being given the easiest chance to score in the entirety of football seems a little unfair.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You could have sort of subset of the penalty area that was only awarded for penalties.
While we're on the subject, let's just stop playing football and put it all on spreadsheets. Let's just run models, predict it, be fine. We'd all win FPL. We'd all just finish first.
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, I can imagine a lot of Sky Sports pundits right now going, listening to this conversation going, what on earth are they talking about?
And I mean, this comes back to the conversation we had earlier where when we're on here on this video talking about, football and FPL, we are talking about, I guess, how to sort of optimize. But I also love the side that is completely nuts and illogical. Like, I love that Leeds can play Man City and beat them 2-1 entirely unfairly. Like, when I say we didn't deserve it, we did deserve it in terms of that is what we did. We ran hard, we played well, we rode our luck. Of course we did. We set up tactically for it. We got a player sent off. We managed to cope with that. That's brilliant. That's exactly what football is about. And that's what I want to happen when I play it on a Sunday. It's not what I want to happen when I play FPL, though. When I play FPL, I want the spreadsheets to be right.
I just think the emotion is why we love it. And it's why we wouldn't have loved a Super League with all the Premier League sides, the top 6, in Europe and stuff like that, because the volatility would be so low. The expectation would be so similar. There would be no upsets. There would be no reason for fans to banter, a Big 6 team for beating them in such an obscure circumstance. And that interaction is just so special in football.
I mean, what is football? If you support a club, it's about being part of a tribe, an identity, having an emotional attachment to something, and the ups and downs that come with that. If you aren't in support of a club, or you're watching 2 teams that you don't support, it's then about entertainment, and it's about watching elite professional athletes do something that is incredible, that you want to recreate but can't quite. And that the City Liverpool game was brilliant because it was entertaining. It was really good to watch. It was a good way to spend 90 minutes and fill my time. Some matches that are 0-0 and boring and horrible are not a good way to spend 90 minutes. But the reason we do it is because something exciting could happen at the end. And I don't know, it's like watching, if you choose to spend those 90 minutes watching a film, of course you would choose an enjoyable film, but you may also choose something you've not seen before, unless you know it's really enjoyable, like rewatching, the World Cup in '66, because you'll derive enjoyment from it. Otherwise, you'll choose something unknown because it's exciting. And that's the same as football. We want, as you said wonderfully, we want that volatility, but we also want entertainment along the road to that volatility, I think.
Absolutely. Lots of kind comments in the chat. Enjoying this conversation. Yes, it's a bit different to what we usually do on Deadline Stream, but when in Rome, when Seb's
we're just
on the
running
stream.
away from the fact that I wish I'd started Adams over Salah and don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, we're glad you guys are enjoying it. And I think we will probably leave it there, Seb. I think it's coming up to the football time in terms of their coverage, and we'll go and watch Spurs. Are you intending on watching the Spurs match?
No, I will try and have some updates on, but I've got to go do daddy duties.
Absolutely. Try not to think about variance too much.
It's all I think about, Ted. It's all I think about. For the record, anyone who does find this conversation enjoyable, I certainly ramble, and I'm only very much an amateur at this. There's a few people on Twitter who you can follow the conversations who, they build the models, FPL builds the models and talks about it very well. I would encourage following them, even if you don't agree. The beautiful thing is you can take their information on board and either disregard it or just twist it to fit what you believe is the best approach.
Absolutely. I mean, some of you watching might be still sticking with us, thinking that we're talking absolute rubbish, but that's absolutely your prerogative for judging that. And FPL is basically a game of opinion, isn't it? And that's why we love it. So yeah. Thanks all for joining. Best of luck this game week. I'm sure you'll do better than me, because Dreadful. And yeah, Seb, I've captained you. I've strikered you in our Fantasy Football Scout
Oh, no.
community league with your free hit. So I've benched myself. You'll be glad to know. But yes, this long drawn out goodbye. Thank you everyone in the chat for joining us. All the best, and see you later.